You said they know what they're going to get.
Look,
what are they going to get?
I have never heard a candidate, never, who has received huge amounts of money from oil, from coal, from Wall Street, from the military-industrial complex. Not one candidate said, oh, these campaign contributions will not influence me. I'm going to be independent. Well, why do they make millions of dollars of campaign contributions? They expect to get something. Everybody knows that. Once again, I am running a campaign differently than any other candidate. We are relying on small campaign donors, 750,000 of them, $30 apiece. That's who I'm indebted to.
Well, John, wait a minute.
Personal privilege.
He has basically used his answer to impugn my integrity. Let's be frank here. Oh, wait a minute, Senator.
Senator Sanders recently said, quote, people should be suspect of candidates who receive large sums of money from Wall Street and then go out and say, trust me, I'm going to really regulate Wall Street. So you've received millions of dollars in contributions and speaking fees from Wall Street companies. How do you convince voters that you're going to level the playing field when you're indebted to some of its biggest players?
I've laid out a very aggressive plan to rein in Wall Street, not just the big banks. That's a part of the problem, and I am going right at them. I've got a comprehensive, tough plan. But I went further than that. We have to go after what's called the shadow banking industry, those hedge funds. Look at what happened in 2008. AIG, a big insurance company, Lehman Brothers, an investment bank, helped to bring our economy down. So I want to look at the whole problem, and that's why my proposal is much more comprehensive than anything else that's been put forth.
Senator Sanders, you've said that the donations to Secretary Clinton are compromising. So what do you think of her answer?
Not good enough. Here's the story. I mean, let's not be naive about it. Why over her political career has Wall Street been the major campaign contributor to Hillary Clinton? Now, maybe they're dumb and they don't know what they're going to get, but I don't think so. Here is the major issue when we talk about Wall Street. It ain't complicated. You got 6 financial institutions today that have assets of 56%, equivalent to 56% of the GDP in America. They issue 2/3 of the credit cards and 1/3 of the mortgages. If Teddy Roosevelt, a good Republican, were alive today, you know what he'd say? Break them up. Reestablish Glass-Steagall. And Teddy Roosevelt is right. That is the issue. Now, I am the only candidate up here that doesn't have a super PAC. I'm not asking Wall Street or the billionaires for money. I will break up these banks, support community banks and credit unions. That's the future of banking in America.
Quick follow-up, because as Secretary Clinton, you'll get a chance to respond. You said they know what they're going to get.
Look,
what are they going to get?
I have never heard a candidate, never, who has received huge amounts of money from oil, from coal, from Wall Street, from the military-industrial complex. Not one candidate said, oh, these campaign contributions will not influence me. I'm going to be independent. Well, why do they make millions of dollars of campaign contributions? They expect to get something. Everybody knows that. I would argue that the disastrous invasion of Iraq, something that I strongly opposed, has unraveled the region completely and led to the rise of Al-Qaeda and to ISIS. Now, in fact, what we have got to do, and I think there is widespread agreement here, is the United States cannot do it alone. What we need to do is lead an international coalition which includes, very significantly, the Muslim nations in that region who are going to have to fight and defend their way of life.
Quickly, just let me ask you a follow-up on that, Senator Sanders. When you say the disastrous vote on Iraq, let's just be clear about what you're saying. You're saying Secretary Clinton, who was then Senator Clinton, voted for the Iraq war. And are you making a direct link between her vote for that war and what's happening now for ISIS, just so everybody can be clear at home?
I don't think any sensible person would disagree that the invasion of Iraq led to the massive level of instability we are seeing right now. I think that was one of the worst foreign policy blunders in the modern history of the United States.
We abided by the agreement that George W. Bush made with the Iraqis to leave by 2011, is that an Iraqi army was left that had been trained and that was prepared to defend Iraq. Unfortunately, Nouri al-Maliki, the prime minister, set about decimating it. And then with the revolution against Assad, and I did early on say we needed to try to find a way to train and equip moderates very early so that we would have a better idea of how to deal with Assad, because I thought there would be extremist groups filling the vacuum.
Not only did I vote against the war in Iraq, if you look at history, John, you will find that regime change, whether it was in the early 50s in Iran, whether it was toppling Salvador Allende in Chile, whether it is overthrowing the government of Guatemala way back when, these invasions, these toppling of governments, regime changes have unintended consequences.
And then, of course, 9/11 happened, which happened before there was an invasion of Iraq. I represented New York, and I represented New York on 9/11. When we were attacked, where were we attacked? We were attacked in downtown Manhattan, where Wall Street is. I did spend a whole lot of time and effort helping them rebuild. That was good for New York, it was good for the economy, and it was a way to rebuke the terrorists who had attacked our country. So, you know, it's fine for you to say what you're going to say.
What crisis have you experienced in your life that suggests you've been tested and can face that inevitable challenge? Secretary Clinton, you first.
Well, there are so many, I don't know where to start. I guess the one I would pick is the fact that I was part of a very small group that had to advise the president about whether or not to go after bin Laden. I spent a lot of time in the Situation Room as Secretary of State, and there were many very difficult choices presented to us, but probably that was the most challenging because there was no certainty attached to it. The intelligence was by no means absolute. We had all kinds of questions that we discussed, and at the end I recommended to the president that we take the chance to do what we could to find out whether that was bin Laden and to finally bring him to justice.
Secretary Clinton, the French president has called this attack an act of war.
Yes.
A couple of days ago you were asked if you would declare war on ISIS, and you said no. What would you say now?
Well, we have an authorization to use military force against terrorists. We passed it after 9/11.
And you think that covers all of this?
It certainly does cover it. I would like to see it updated.
If you were in the Senate, would you be okay with the Commander-in-Chief doing that without coming back to you?
No, it would have to go through the Congress. And I know the White House has actually been working with members of Congress. Maybe now we can get it moving again so that we can upgrade it.
You said they know what they're going to get.
Look,
what are they going to get?
I have never heard a candidate, never, who has received huge amounts of money from oil, from coal, from Wall Street, from the military-industrial complex. Not one candidate said, oh, these campaign contributions will not influence me. I'm going to be independent. Well, why do they make millions of dollars of campaign contributions? This nation is the most powerful military in the world. We're spending over $600 billion a year on the military. And yet significantly less than 10% of that money is used to be fighting international terrorism. We are spending hundreds of billions of dollars maintaining 5,000 nuclear weapons. I think we need major reform in the military, making it more cost effective.
So there does need to be a whole of government approach. But just because we're involved and we have a strategy doesn't mean we're going to be able to dictate the outcome. These are often very long-term kinds of investments that have to be made.
When you talk about the long-term consequences of war, let's talk about the men and women who came home from war. The 500,000 who came home with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And I would hope that in the midst of all of this discussion, this country makes certain that we do not turn our backs on the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend us, and that we stand with them as they have stood with us.